everyone, and welcome to another edition of Connecting with Kim here on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. We're so glad that you joined us today. We have another great show for you. And of course, you can catch the audio of our show on Sun Radio in Sun City Center, 96.3 FM, and on stream. We are airing at Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3:30 in the afternoon. So you can join us here, and you can join us there. So before we get started, I want to thank my sponsors, the Spring of Tampa Bay, who provide my beautiful, including all my fancy jewels and my bracelets and my necklaces. They provide my wardrobe for on air. And if you aren't familiar with the Spring of Tampa Bay, you should be. They have been providing sanctuary and services to abused adults and their children, victims of domestic violence, since 1977. And they are the largest of 42 certified domestic violence shelters in the state. And they are first to have an accredited school on site. They have two boutiques, the Spring Boutique, which is at the corner of Swann and Henderson, which is where my clothes come from, and they have the thrift store on North Willow. And all the net proceeds from their store go to support their mission. So if you haven't been there, get yourself there, and you can find everything that I wear in the show there. So if you like what I'm wearing, go get it. So I'm so excited to introduce my guest today. He is a man who really doesn't need any introduction because he's a legend in Tampa, and he's a Tampa native on top of that. And but I'm going to introduce him anyway because we have so many things to talk about. My guest in the chair today is Mr. Victor DiMaio from DiMaio and Associates. Welcome to Connecting with Kim.
Thank you so much for being allowing me to be here and rattle on about all the different things we do, and you know. And I appreciate it. TBA is one of my favorite places in the world.
Mine too.
I love this place.
Well, you know, I wanted to have you on because you have such a wonderful, varied background. You and I have known each other for years.
Yes.
In the interest of full disclosure, folks, Victor and I have known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
More than 20 years probably, and because of our families.
Right.
And I also feel extremely blessed and honored because I really feel, folks, that my opportunity to do Connecting with Kim on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network was a direct result of you. And I'm happy to say that, you know, so, but I just wanted to have you on because you have such a, you know, you're a Tampa native, you have such a varied background, you know everybody in this town, you know everything that's going on, and I just thought it would be fun to sit down and talk with you.
Well, you're a welcome addition to the network. In full disclosure, I am the lobbyist for better for worse for TBAE amongst my other hundreds of clients. But yes, TBAE, we could talk about that. We could spend really an hour and a half doing a show on, you know, starting from Vic's beginning to now. But
the show's about you, and we can't do that because we only have 27 minutes.
No, I know.
And they'll cut me off. I guarantee me they will.
Right.
But you know,
and you did a nice plug for the Spring. The Spring's a great place and to support.
How could you not love them?
The Spring is
right?
a great place. Yeah.
Mindy Murphy and the whole crew there. Love them.
Yeah.
Well, but
when I was president of Tiger Bay Club, she was on my board, and
I know she was.
And she worked. You know, she works very hard. It's a very tough job.
Well, everyone knows, and that's been watching Connecting with Kim or listening to Connecting with Kim for more than 2.5 years. I always start the show with letting my guests talk about their background.
Right.
Because usually we're here to talk about a specific topic.
Right.
And we will talk about what DiMaio and Associates does, because I know that there are people out there wondering, what do they really do? So let's just start wherever you want to start.
Well, I'm glad you talked about our moms and dads, because it's true. That's how we kind of hooked up and met for the very first time. Because you know, if for people who don't know, you know, your mom and dad, your late dad, of course, and like my late dad, because our moms are still around. That's
right. Thank God.
They were a great team, individually, as a couple, and even the four of them, because we really cut our teeth in politics, and that's how I really got involved, as we say. You know, a lot of people sit home and complain about things, and I always tell people, why don't you get off your doofus and do something about it?
Exactly.
Regardless of, and even when I go down this show, I always do a pre-election show with Mario, who has Mario Nunes, who does the Tampa Native show, and we talk a lot about politics. Even though we're not in the same party, obviously, for those in full disclosure, I'm a Democrat.
You're a Democrat and I'm a Republican.
Right. and see, guys, it shows that if you're a Democrat and a Republican,
We
you
can
can
still
get
get
along.
together.
Which is so bizarre in today's world, and it just breaks my heart the way people just yell and scream and argue and do horrible things to each other. But yes, you can be of the other party and get along. I mean, I lobbied in Tallahassee for years as a Democrat, but some of my closest friends that I worked with up there were Republicans because, frankly, the Republican Party is. Even though when I started in politics, well, if I go back to elementary school and high school, I was involved because my mom and dad both ran for office. And I got involved in their campaigns. And then when I was in Academy of Holy Names, I ran for student body president at one. And, even at Jesuit high school, I was active in politics. And when I went to Florida State, I was active in student government. So, and the reason I got to Florida State was because I worked on a statewide campaign for a guy named Bob Graham who ran for governor. And I was one of his first press secretaries. And of course, he went on to become a senator. And I worked for other politicians there, Bill Gunter and some other things. And then I kind of did a little Sidewinder thing and worked in media as well, which we can get into later. But just continue with politics, that's been a big part of my life for many years. And it's a way for people in the Latin community, which is where I'm from. My dad's Italian. My grandfather was the first doctor of the Italian Club in Ybor City back 100 years ago. And my mom's side is Cuban. And of course, as we know, Tampa's the cigar capital of the world. And that's where my mom's side came from, Cuba to Ybor City to make cigars. And then they went into the grocery store business. And my grandfather was a butcher. We were talking before we went on the air about your daddy. When he was, kind of getting early on in life, was a butcher too.
Well,
so.
he worked in a butcher's shop in Nashville.
Right. And I did too. I got up on a couple of egg crates at the grocery store and tried to slice meat and ended up slicing my finger. So I wasn't very successful as a butcher, but I figured, how kids are. They want to follow in their grandparents and see what their grandparents do. But I just love politics, and it wasn't as politics has always had a little tinge of kind of hate the other guy, which is kind of what I love about sports. Because but the thing about sports is when the game's over, you're supposed to shake hands and say, hey,
Well, usually, but we're even seeing sports change from that point of view too.
A little
it's getting
bit,
a lot more combative and antagonistic and nasty.
It is, but what's really what I love about, like hockey, for example.
Yeah.
After a series is over, and these guys, as you know, beat the tar out of each other, even when the Lightning are playing the Avalanche. But when the series is over, what do? They get in line and they go one by one and they stand in the middle of the court and they shake hands and they hug each other. Because a lot of these guys grew up as kids playing hockey.
Right.
And they went to college playing hockey. So a lot of these guys kind of know each other. When the game's on and that light goes on, they want to kill each other. But the best thing is when it's over, they can kind of, and that's what I love even about football when the game's over. A lot of guys go in the middle of the field. A lot of these guys on opposite teams play college ball together or high school together. And they exchange their T-shirts and they hug and their wives are friends and stuff. But that's what's good about sports, and that's what I loved about sports. And I covered sports. If we have time, we can talk about that. That's what my early.
We could talk. This time is devoted to you, and you could talk about any aspect of your life that you want to. But I did promise Bertie that we would absolutely cover what DiMaio and Associates does, because she asked me before, "What do they do?" And I'm like, "Well, I know what they do."
Yeah, well, because of my involvement in politics and knowing politicians, a lot of people have issues before the government. Sometimes the government doesn't respond as well as we'd like. So people call me up and says, Vic, I have this problem. It's with the city or the county or the state or even now the federal government. I'm doing some lobbying on that level. And they say, can you help me out? And
Hang on. I can't imagine anybody calling and saying the government is not responsive.
Well, the government can be unresponsive.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a big battleship, and it doesn't move very quickly, and it doesn't turn around very quickly either. So there's a lot of red tape. People just really pull their hair out and try to figure out what the heck's going on. And the government can help people at times when they want to, and other times they can be hard to deal with. So. That's where I come in, and a lot of from the smallest bars and restaurants to Burn Steakhouse, for example, is one of my clients. I help them with a lot of little issues that they may have here and there, and I help people if they have a piece of property they want to zone it a certain way to build something on there. I try to help to figure out what they can or can't do. So it's a lot of that, but the government on every level is a bureaucracy, no matter what. And the bigger the government, the federal government, you think the city's bad, you should try dealing with the federal government with all.
I can't imagine.
It's
layers and layers and layers.
It's a nightmare. It's tough, and that's why people sometimes get frustrated. Because it is such a big monster.
But you come in and you kind of fix it for them.
Well, I try. I mean, it's not. It's I don't promise anything. I say let me see what I can do. Is the first thing I tell people. I said, I know you got a problem. I've done this before. Even if I haven't done it before, I usually try to say, let me see. Let me take a whack at it. So
yeah, but at being a Tampa native and growing up here and knowing so many people and being involved in so many different organizations,
that's right.
You know a lot of people, and you and I both know. I mean, I this has been my watchword through my. It's not always what you know; it's who you know.
Right.
Right.
And I was an aide in Tallahassee to a state representative one time, and there's two layers of government. There's the elected officials, and there's the bureaucracy.
Right, the civil servants.
And the funny thing is, some of the bureaucracy have been there for a long time. And I had one bureaucrat who I was trying to help somebody out when I worked for a rep, and I said, and he said, and they just flat out told me, he says, look, you're going to be gone in a year, and I'm going to still be here. And that's the way the bureaucrats think.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. There's I mean, not all, but there's some bureaucrats who they feel like entitled, and they kind of sometimes they forget that they're here. They get paid by the people. They're supposed to work for the people. They're not. They're not independent of who they're supposed to work for, and it's a struggle, but we all have to get along, and we all have to do the best we can, and we all have to try. So that's kind of what DiMaio and Associates does. It's not anything that's unique to any one part. And also I try to, being that my mom's Hispanic or Cuban, my dad's Italian, I'm fortunate to be able to work in the Hispanic community, which is huge and growing. Hispanics in Hillsborough County alone make up 25% of the population, which is 1 out of every 4 people.
Right.
And I just got reelected a few weeks ago to be president of the Hispanic Democratic Caucus, and we try. We try to get. We like to get Hispanics. Look, if you think an Anglo person feels left out, you can imagine somebody doesn't speak the language, and it's very difficult. A lot of people come here. There's people who have been here a long time and people who have just gotten here. And it just breaks my heart when people don't like they speak ill of immigrants and people who've come here, whether they're from Mexico or Central America, South America, or the Caribbean, or whatever. And I think, the whole United States we're all a land of immigrants. All of us are immigrants.
We all came from somewhere.
Right. If
not here.
Unless you're an Indian, unless you're
Native American.
Or unless you're Native American, who have been here for tens of thousands of years, you pretty much came on a boat.
That's right. You came from somewhere.
Somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And we're, I'm, I guess your family is Irish or?
My family's mutt.
Okay.
My family's German, Irish, English, and Welsh.
There you go.
So
there's five combinations of immigrants there. Right.
And God only knows
how that boat ended up over here.
Well, and what they were doing before they got here.
Yes, right.
I don't like to poke around too much because you never know what you're going to find when you start poking.
Right.
It's not like poking that bear.
Right.
I mean, I envy you that that you're my late husband. He was half German and half Russian. He knew exactly where his family came from. And I used to tease him all the time that, and you inherited the best qualities of both of those ethnic groups.
Well, I'm going to do some more homework. I know just from my grandparents, my mom's side was born and raised in Cuba. And they came here to Ybor City to make cigars. My grandfather was from a little town called Bejucal in Cuba. My grandma's from Santiago, Las Vegas, which is near Havana Airport. My father's side is from a part of Italy called Puglia, which, if you think of Italy being a boot, it's the heel of the boot.
It's the heel of the boot.
It's a little right-hand corner of Italy. So, but like I say, immigrants make us a diverse, unique, kind of cool place in the world. I think you can't just. I don't think if you're just one society from one background and you don't diversify yourself. I mean, it doesn't.
It'd be boring.
It'd be boring, right?
I mean, think about how much good food we wouldn't enjoy. So if
Right.
you're just joining me now on Connecting with Kim, my guest in the chair is the legendary Victor. I love saying that. Is the legendary Victor DiMaio from DiMaio and Associates, but he's also a Tampa native.
Right.
He's Hispanic in origin. He has a very diverse career. And I think we should spend a few minutes talking about your career in media because, you've done some interesting things.
It's funny, when the Bucks first became a team back in the mid-'70s, I had a buddy of mine who was at HCC. I was going to school at Hillsborough College after Jesuit, before I went to Florida State. And, I said, we were figuring out, I said, I'd really like to go see the football games, but we didn't have a whole lot of money, and believe it, we were bitching. But back then, the Bucks ticket was like $13 or something.
And how much is it now?
Oh, geez,
You probably get yours for free.
So he says, look, you can, you don't have to be smart to be in the media. You just got to have a connection. So I said, he said, just go to a radio station, tell them you're going to do reports or something for the Bucks, and that's how I really first started doing 80 media stuff. At the time, we had the old Tampa Tribune, was called the Tampa Morning Tribune, which was king because Pinellas County had the Times, which was a small little paper. They didn't cross the bay, they didn't compete with each other. But Tampa's always been, or Hillsborough County's always been the hub of politics. In fact, Hillsborough County one time, ran all the way across the bay.
Well, actually, Pinellas County grew out of Hillsborough County.
Carved out of Hillsborough County, right? So the Tampa Morning Tribune was the king, and then they had the afternoon paper was the Tampa Bay Times. Where I did a couple of sports, high school football, covered some games and wrote some little columns and stuff here and there, and helped some friends out, working all night to do the stories. But this is the first time I really got in to see, actually get a radio station and do reports, live from Tampa Stadium. So I went to all the stadiums, all the stations around, and they were all they really weren't interested. The Bucks were not the Bucks, year 1 through 3. In fact, they lost 3 years in a row before they actually even won a game. They were so bad at the very beginning. So I finally landed on a Spanish radio station. So I was the first person in the history of the Bucks to do the Bucks games in Spanish.
Oh, really?
So
you were doing it in Spanish?
I was doing.
I
was doing
that.
a report. I didn't do the whole play. That came later on. They actually were covering the Bucks do their games in Spanish and English. And I did convince the radio station I worked for. Says, in other markets like the Dallas Cowboys in Texas and other big markets that have Spanish people, you could do these games in Spanish. So I did the Bucks games in Spanish, and it was fun because I got to interview the guys. And I had a buddy of mine from Jesuit who's the manager, and he used to play my Spanish radio reports in the locker room for the players, and they were like, I would intersperse an English name. Yeah. So we had a lot of fun with that. And then I did eventually work with the networks. I worked with NBC, ABC, Mutual Broadcasting, which was a big radio network at the time.
I remember it.
Way back then. And then I fancied working in television. So my friend Jimmy Williams, he's an Emmy Award-winning director, producer, and he even did sports. He came down here to Tampa from up north in Pittsburgh, and he's the one that kind of mentored me and kind of gave me, he said, you can do this. He said, this is not. You just need the right little push, and you can do it yourself. And he ended up going to. We ended up going. At that time, cable was not very big. Cable was just. We had teleprompter cable with 10 channels. Now you got 1,000 channels. None of them you are worth watching.
And you still can't find anything to watch.
You still can't find anything to watch. Right? So I worked in.
Except TBAE.
Right. So we went to teleprompter cable in Pinellas County, and they had a little studio about this size, and we did. Little sports stuff, little sports shows, talking about sports media and whatever the case may be. And I actually got to work in front of the camera and behind the camera, which is what I really loved. I love shooting video just as much as I do doing reports. So I never could figure out which side of the camera I liked better, but I did like working both sides and editing and producing and all that stuff. So we ended up working at Channel 44, WTOJ, which was owned by Hubbard Broadcasting. Now it's a CBS affiliate.
Right.
And that's when we got to a big station and a big market, and we did our own 10 o'clock news show way back then, 30 years ago. And then I really got to, and it was cool because it was a small news department with maybe 10 of us, And people used to call us up for the weather. I go, why'd you call Channel 13? They got a weather department. We just read whatever the computer tells us.
Well, now you just look
and
at
they
your
say,
phone.
well, we don't want to bother them, so they bothered us. But the cool part about it, we could do anything we wanted to. It wasn't, we didn't have we had a small staff. We kind of decided what we were going to do, and we did it. So I learned a lot at Channel 44, and putting a new show together and putting it on the air and producing other stuff. And because they also 44 had a division called F&F Productions, and they had a huge mobile truck at the time, a big 40-foot tractor trailer, and anything in this area where you did the Buccaneer football games or baseball or rowdy soccer, whatever, they would send out the truck and do the production. So I got to learn on a big, $20 million truck with all the bells and whistles you could imagine. So that was a lot of fun. But then cable got a little bit bigger, and we got an opportunity to work for what at the time was called Sunshine Sports, because the cable companies in Florida got together and says, we want to be able to provide for people to buy cable. We want to have some extra program, because programming is king. You got to have program that people want to watch.
Right.
So they went out. Sunshine was a consortium of all the cable networks in the state of Florida, and it was called Sunshine Network. And the Florida Cable Television Association did an hour public affairs show, and the rest was all. They had signed FSU Sports, FAU Sports, UCF Sports, and then they had a truck, and we traveled all around the states doing all the football, baseball, all the sports it was. And they had two networks. There was Sunshine Network and then Sports Channel. Sports Channel had one property, and that was the Gators. And it was, in Florida, the Gators are king.
King.
So
in more than one way.
So we had two. Florida is unique in the sense we had two unique cable sports broadcast networks here,
right.
Owned by two different companies. So what happened was, eventually, as consolidation in media always happens, somebody came around and bought Sunshine Sports and Sports Channel, and they called them both Sun Sports. And for many, many years, Sun Sports had FSU and Florida, and then Rupert Murdoch came in from Fox and bought up all these regional sports networks, and that's why that's why it was called Fox Sun Sports. And then South Florida, the properties there were the Miami Hurricanes, the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat. Florida's kind of split in half.
Right.
And up here we have Orlando Magic, with the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Buccaneers, and obviously the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Right.
So Murdoch decided to sell them all, and that's why you see the people from another network came in and bought them out, because there was a big buyout because they had to do the splits and all this kind of stuff. So now that's why you have.
Good Lord, you could teach a course on this at FSU.
That's why
or
now
USF.
You see Bally Sports, and Bally's doesn't
Am
really.
I right?
Right. And this is the first time I've seen a network that now you see Bally Sports. Bally's doesn't technically own it. It's just like a marketing. Bally's is obviously Bally's,
right.
casino.
Casino.
Right. So it's an opportunity for Bally Casino, because in the old days, gambling with sports was a big no-no.
Oh, yeah.
Now you see DraftKings.
Well, they wouldn't even let Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame.
Right. Even I saw during the Lightning game, they were giving odds midway through the game on who
know.
was going to win.
I know.
So, so baseball.
How far we've come.
And actually, NFL just cut a multi-billion-dollar deal with DraftKings and these other guys to be a part. There's an old saying: if you can't beat them, join them.
If you can't beat them, join them. Yeah.
And there's
huge money to be made.
And there's a lot of do-re-mi to be
a
involved.
lot of dough.
So,
I like that do-re-mi.
There's a lot of do-re-mi involved. So now you see all the gambling is an integral part of professional sports now.
So, like in a nutshell, how did you get to what you're doing today?
Well, I mean, it was a lot of fun.
I mean, in a nutshell.
It's fun when you're younger and you're traveling, and I've been almost all around the world with television and cable and broadcast and all that stuff. But eventually you got to settle down. Your parents get older. You want to be close to home, and you want to be able to do stuff. So I eventually got back into politics and did a lot of campaigns for different people, and again, branched out into doing lobbying because people know, well, you know so and so.
Well, politics and lobbying kind of go hand in hand.
Yes, right. People hire you not because of what you know, but who you know.
Who you know.
Right.
It's all about
who you know. And that's why I try to do the best I can to be to know as many politicians as possible.
On both sides.
On both sides, right. You know.
Well, so I can see why you spend an hour with.
We can do
Mario.
an hour. We can do.
Well, you have to come back because they don't give me an
back.
hour for this show.
No, I know. But you know, television is. You know, we went in that tangent, and I've tried to. I've done a little bit of this, and on you know on Maudio's show. But
I know.
And we can talk about politics too. We can come back and do a whole thing on politics and try to keep it as as low key as possible.
I try to stay away from politics because honestly, it's so. Well, first of all, there are so many outlets. But anyway, they're giving me the sign.
Okay.
So I want to thank you for being my guest today.
No, I appreciate you having me on.
Well, you can come. You can come back anytime. You know that.
I'm always available.
Yeah, I know you are. And no, well, that's not really true. You're very hard to schedule.
Well, for you, I'll make exception. And TBAE.
Okay, so
We gotta
forgive
help
me,
our friends.
folks. My guest in the chair today has been Vic DiMaio from DiMaio and Associates. I want to thank him so much for being my guest on Connecting with Kim. We want to thank you for joining us today on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. Don't forget to check us out on Sun Radio, 96.3 FM down at Sun City Center, and on stream, which means you can get us anywhere. And I want to once again thank my sponsors for my on-air clothing, which is the Spring of Tampa Bay. And if you go to their boutique at the corner of Swann and Henderson, you will be able to have all of these clothes and jewels except this top, because this is mine. So come back again next week when we have another edition of Connecting with Kim, helping you live your best life in our corner of paradise. So long.